The alien scout vessel moved slowly through the empty stretch of space that divided the Kraylan Dominion from the uncharted frontier. The ship was small compared to the great carriers of the Dominion fleet, but it carried the best sensors, the most skilled analysts, and the most disciplined crew. Its purpose was simple yet important: to explore the unknown and report any sign of possible threat or opportunity. For months they had seen nothing except dead moons and quiet stars. The crew had grown used to the silence until one day, something appeared on their long-range scanners. It was faint at first, just a pattern of strange pulses echoing through the void. The signals were soft, steady, and rhythmic, as if someone was sending a message through the deep dark. The ship's communication officer leaned closer to his console, trying to match the signal with any known pattern in their database. But there was no match. It was something new, something not of the Dominion. The commander of the vessel was a tall Kraylan with gray scales and calm golden eyes. He had seen many strange things during his years of exploration, but this signal gave him an uneasy feeling. He ordered the crew to focus the scanners and trace the origin of the pulses. As the ship moved closer, the sensors picked up faint distortions, unusual magnetic waves that made the readings unstable. The navigator reported that the interference was growing stronger, and their instruments began to flicker. Still, the commander refused to pull back. Curiosity and duty were stronger than fear. The crew adjusted the ship's shields and continued forward, unaware that they were approaching something that should not exist. As the ship drifted into the region where the signal came from, the sensors detected massive objects ahead. They appeared cold and dark without power signatures, almost invisible except for the faint reflection of distant starlight. The crew assumed they were asteroids, but their formation was too precise. The objects were lined up in a pattern that no natural formation could make. It was deliberate, organized, and silent. The commander ordered visual scans, and the external cameras showed long metallic shapes with sharp edges and faded markings. At first, the crew could not understand what they were looking at. Then the image sharpened and they saw it clearly. These were ships, enormous warships, drifting without movement yet perfectly aligned as if waiting for something. The communication officer whispered that there were at least 12 of them, maybe more, hidden in the shadows. The Kraylan crew stared at the screen in disbelief. None of the ships matched any known alien design. Their structures were dense, built for endurance rather than elegance. Their hulls were armored with old metals, and yet they emitted a faint power trace like a heartbeat under layers of ice. The commander ordered the historian to cross-check the hull patterns, and after a few minutes the result came back with an ancient record. The symbols on those hulls matched the extinct species once known as humanity. The name brought silence to the bridge. Humanity had disappeared long ago after the great collapse that wiped out their colonies. The galaxy believed they were gone forever, destroyed by their own wars and experiments. Yet the proof was right before their eyes. The commander leaned forward, studying the ghostly fleet. He could not believe it. Humans were a myth among the younger species, a warning from history about ambition and power. The Kraylan Dominion itself had risen after the fall of mankind, taking control of many systems once ruled by human nations. The idea that humanity might still exist sent a chill through the crew. Some believed the ships were derelicts left from the old war, but others whispered that no dead fleet could stay perfectly still for centuries. The commander decided to scan one of the nearest ships more closely, hoping to understand if there was life aboard. The moment he gave the order, the ship's systems began to flicker again. The lights dimmed, the main screen flashed, and the sensors went offline one by one. Panic spread across the control room. The engineer reported that their power output was dropping fast. It made no sense because their reactor was stable seconds ago. The commander shouted commands, trying to keep order, but the situation grew worse. The communications officer tried to send an emergency beacon, but the transmitter refused to respond. A strange static noise filled the bridge, and then the ship's artificial intelligence started to reboot itself without command. It was as if something from outside had entered their network. The crew could only watch as their systems were taken over piece by piece. Then, through the static, a voice appeared. It was soft but clear, speaking in an old galactic dialect. The words were simple and terrifying. The voice said, "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted Terran airspace. Disengage immediately." The entire bridge fell silent. The commander froze. The voice was human. It had the deep, calm tone of someone who was not afraid, someone who had absolute control. The communication officer tried to respond, but the transmission channels were dead. The voice repeated the same words again, this time slower, as if giving a final warning. The commander's heart raced. He had heard recordings of old human speech in the academy, and this sounded exactly the same. The Kraylan crew sat frozen in their seats. The engineer whispered that their entire system had been scanned, their reactor, life support, even personal devices. Every piece of their technology had been touched by an unseen force. The commander ordered a full system shutdown to cut off the intrusion, but it was already too late. The human fleet ahead of them began to move. Not fast, not aggressive, but deliberate. The ships glided forward without visible engines, without heat or sound. Their movements were graceful and silent, like giants waking from sleep. One of the ships turned slightly, and its surface shimmered as faint blue lines lit up along its hull. It was alive. The Kraylan commander stood watching as the enormous vessel faced them directly. He felt a strange mixture of fear and awe. Humanity, once thought extinct, was right there, hidden in the shadows, watching. He realized they had made a mistake by coming here. The legend said humans were builders, warriors, and dreamers, but also destroyers when threatened. If this was truly a human fleet, then their technology had evolved far beyond anything known. The commander's instincts screamed to retreat, but his ship could not move. The propulsion system had been locked down remotely. The crew's panic grew. They could not fire, they could not run, and they could not communicate. They were trapped in the dark, under the gaze of something far greater than themselves. The voice came again, this time closer, as if the speaker was standing in the room. "You have been warned," it said. Then the signal vanished, and their ship's lights flickered back to life. The system slowly rebooted, and the crew gasped as air circulation resumed and gravity stabilized. The human fleet was gone. The sensors showed nothing. The space where the ships had been was empty and quiet again, as if nothing had ever been there. The Kraylan commander stood silently at the center of the bridge, unable to speak. His crew looked at him for orders, but he had none to give. He finally whispered that they were leaving. The navigator engaged the hyperdrive, and the small vessel fled back toward Dominion space, leaving behind a silence that felt alive. The crew did not speak for the rest of the journey. Each of them knew they had seen something the galaxy had forgotten, something that could change everything. Humanity was not gone. They were out there, hidden, powerful, and watching, and they had just reminded the galaxy that some ghosts never fade. The Kraylan scout ship drifted through the dark space after leaving the strange sector where the human fleet had been seen. The crew was quiet and tense. The commander sat in his chair, his eyes fixed on the fading stars ahead. Every member of the crew was still shaken by what they had witnessed. The feeling of helplessness still hung over them. Their ship had been strong and modern, but before those silent human vessels it had felt like a fragile toy in a storm. The commander kept thinking about the voice they had heard. It had been calm, controlled, and absolutely certain. It had spoken as if it still ruled the stars. The humans had not sounded like ghosts or survivors. They had sounded like masters. The engineer continued checking the systems again and again, trying to understand what had happened. He said that the entire ship's power grid had been disabled by something that left no trace. The computers showed no sign of attack, no code, no signal, no mark. It was as if their own systems had turned against them for a few minutes and then came back to normal. The communication officer tried to replay the voice, but the recording had been erased. Every copy of it was gone, deleted from every memory file. The commander ordered silence. He knew that what they had seen could not be explained to the Dominion command without proof. If they went back with only stories, they would be called fools or liars. Still, they had no choice but to return and report. Days passed. The crew tried to rest, but sleep did not come easily. The youngest among them whispered about human ghosts haunting the stars. The navigator said he could still feel something following them, some quiet presence beyond their sensors. The commander told them to focus, but deep inside he felt it too. The space around them seemed heavier, as if the emptiness itself was watching. When they finally crossed back into Dominion space, the tension began to lift, but not completely. The commander knew the real challenge was still ahead. Telling their leaders what had happened could destroy their careers. The Dominion did not like stories that made it look weak. When they arrived at the nearest outpost, the commander reported to the Central Authority. The high officers listened but did not believe him. They said that no human ships could exist. They said that the collapse of humanity had been confirmed thousands of years ago. The sensors must have been tricked by radiation or illusions. The commander insisted that he had seen the ships himself. He described the formation, the markings, and the voice. The officers remained calm, but their faces grew hard. One of them told him to stop spreading fear. They ordered the ship to be inspected for malfunctions and the crew to be questioned. The engineers from the command base worked for days checking every system on the scout ship. They found nothing unusual. The power grid was stable, the communication lines were normal, and the logs were clean. Yet deep within the data records, one technician found a strange pattern, a sequence of numbers that did not belong there. It was hidden under layers of code as if someone or something had left it there on purpose. When they tried to decode it, the numbers formed a simple phrase written in an ancient human language. It said, "We see you." The technician froze and showed it to his superior, but within seconds the message disappeared. The file vanished completely, leaving behind a blank space. The technician was told to forget what he saw. Meanwhile, the commander was placed in a long interview with Dominion intelligence. They asked him to repeat every detail from the start. He told them about the signal, the silent fleet, the voice, and how their systems had been disabled. The officers listened carefully, taking notes. After hours of questioning, they told him that his story would be classified and that he was forbidden to discuss it with anyone. The commander protested, but their decision was final. They said the report would be filed under anomalous interference. He was dismissed with no further explanation. After returning to his quarters, the commander stared at the stars through the small window. He thought about the human ships again. There had been no aggression, no violence, only control. They could have destroyed the Kraylan scout easily, but they did not. Instead, they had only sent a warning. He wondered why. If the humans were alive, what were they doing in that empty region of space? Why had they stayed hidden for so long? He had no answers, but deep inside he felt that their silence meant something. Humans had always been ambitious and curious. They never hid without a reason. In the following weeks, rumors started to spread through the Dominion fleet. Someone had overheard that a scout ship had seen something impossible. Some said it was a lost fleet of ancient machines. Others said it was a new empire preparing for war. The higher command tried to silence the whispers, but the fear had already begun to spread. The crew of the scout ship became distant from others. Some resigned from duty. The engineer left the fleet entirely. The communication officer began studying old human records secretly, trying to learn what had really happened during the collapse. He discovered that the humans had once built ships capable of traveling between galaxies. Many of those ships had disappeared before the collapse, their destinations unknown. Late one night, the communication officer brought his findings to the commander. He showed him the old data about human colony ships and long-range fleets. He said that maybe the humans had not died out but had gone far away to rebuild. The commander listened in silence. If that was true, then the fleet they saw might not be ghosts but descendants of those travelers who had returned. The officer said that the humans might have been watching the galaxy all along, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. The commander agreed that it was possible. He said that if the humans had survived and built such power, then the galaxy was no longer safe to assume it ruled alone. Days later, the scout ship received an unexpected order. They were to return to the same sector where the incident had occurred. The commander was surprised. He asked why, but no reason was given. The Dominion command simply said it was a routine verification mission. The crew protested, but the order could not be refused. So once again, they set their course toward the quiet and forbidden space. As they traveled, the crew grew uneasy. Each star they passed seemed colder. The navigator swore that the same static patterns had begun to appear on the sensors again. The commander told them to stay calm, but his hands trembled slightly. He knew they were not alone. When they reached the border of the sector, the sensors began to fail once more. The same distortions appeared. The engineer tried to stabilize the readings, but the interference grew stronger. The commander gave the order to stop all movement and wait. The lights flickered. A soft hum filled the air like the sound of distant thunder. The crew stared at the main screen, waiting for something to appear. The hum grew louder. Then in the darkness ahead, faint blue lights began to shine one by one, forming a line across the stars. The commander felt his heart beat faster. The human fleet was back. The ships emerged from the shadows, larger and clearer than before. Their hulls glowed with slow waves of light. The same calm voice echoed through the communication system. "You were warned," it said. "Why did you return?" The commander tried to explain, saying they had been ordered to verify the readings, but the voice did not respond. Instead, a deep vibration ran through the ship. The screens went black. The lights dimmed again. The ship was powerless, trapped once more. The commander closed his eyes and waited, knowing that the humans could do anything they wished now. But instead of destruction, something else happened. The voice spoke again, softer this time. "You do not understand yet? We are not your enemy, but if you come again, we will not be so gentle." Then the connection cut off and the lights returned. The human fleet vanished again into the void. The commander sat in silence. He understood now that this was not a random event. The humans were guarding something. Maybe it was a world, maybe a secret, maybe something far greater. Whatever it was, they did not want anyone near it. He knew that the Dominion would never stop trying to uncover the truth, but he also knew that humanity was not something they could fight. He looked out at the stars and whispered that the galaxy was not as empty as everyone believed. Somewhere in the dark, the humans were awake, and they had not forgotten their place among the stars. The Kraylan scout ship drifted silently after the second encounter with the human fleet. The crew was shaken even more than before. No one could speak for hours. The voice of the human that had warned them still echoed in their minds. It had not sounded angry, but it carried a weight that made them feel small and powerless. The commander sat quietly in his chair, his eyes fixed on the blackness outside the viewport. He had spent his entire career believing the Kraylan Dominion ruled the stars. But now he knew that belief was nothing more than a lie. Somewhere out there in the dark, humanity was alive, hidden, and far stronger than anyone had imagined. When they returned to Dominion space again, the commander expected another round of questioning, but this time it was different. Dominion intelligence took the crew away separately and told them not to speak to one another. Their ship was taken for inspection, and the commander was moved to an isolated facility on a distant moon. For days he was asked about every small detail, every flicker of light, every word the human voice had said. The officials were not calm anymore. They seemed nervous and frightened, though they tried to hide it. They asked again and again if he had seen anything that looked like a human base or if he had noticed any sign of human colonies. The commander told them no, only ships, and that they had appeared and vanished like shadows. The officers made notes in silence and left without explanation. After the questioning, the commander was told to rest in his quarters, but the guards outside made it clear that he was not free to leave. He sat by the window, watching the endless glow of the gas giant that orbited the moon. He could not sleep. He thought about the humans again and again. Why were they there? What were they guarding? Why did they let the Kraylan ship live both times? He remembered the words of the voice, "You do not understand yet." That phrase stayed with him. He wondered what it meant. Maybe the humans had learned something that others could not. Maybe they had reached a level of control over the universe that no one else had achieved. Weeks passed before the commander was finally released, but he was not allowed to return to his old post. He was assigned to a small station on the edge of Dominion space, far from major routes. The official reason was retirement duty, but he knew the truth. The Dominion wanted to keep him away from people who might listen to his story. Still, he did not mind. The silence of the station gave him time to think. Every night he looked up at the stars, wondering if the humans were watching. Sometimes he felt as if his own instruments were being observed. Small glitches appeared in the station's systems, brief flashes of static that disappeared before he could trace them. He began keeping a private record of these incidents, though he knew it was dangerous. In another part of the Dominion, high-level meetings were being held in secret. The reports from the scout ship had reached the highest council. Most of the leaders refused to believe them at first, but the data taken from the ship could not be explained. The strange energy readings, the interference patterns, the hidden message that had said, "We see you," all of it pointed to a force that surpassed their understanding. The council ordered the formation of a special task group. They called it the Silent Wing. Its mission was to investigate the truth about the lost human race. Only a few people knew of its existence, and they worked under strict secrecy. The Silent Wing gathered all old records about humans from the ancient archives. They studied the wars, the inventions, and the final collapse that had supposedly wiped them out. The more they studied, the more questions they found. The humans had disappeared suddenly without leaving clear traces. Many of their colonies had simply gone silent. Some were found later, completely empty, with power still running and food untouched. No one had ever understood what had happened to them. The Silent Wing began to believe that the humans had not been destroyed but had chosen to vanish. That thought frightened them more than anything else. A species that could choose to disappear from the galaxy might have discovered something beyond normal existence. Meanwhile, on the small station, the commander continued to notice strange things. One night, while monitoring deep space channels, he heard a faint transmission that did not match any known format. It was weak and broken, but he recognized something familiar in it. The pattern of the pulses was the same as the signal his ship had detected before their first encounter with the humans. He froze. He knew this was not an accident. He recorded the signal and played it again and again. Slowly, he realized that it was not random. It was a message repeating in an old human code. He used translation software to decode it, but it failed. Then he tried an ancient archive of human military codes, and to his shock, it worked. The message said only one thing: do not come again. He felt a cold fear run through him. He knew they were aware of his location. The humans knew he was still watching. The next morning, he tried to send the recording to the Dominion command, but the communication system failed. The data file was gone. The message had erased itself. He understood now that nothing he did was hidden from them. They were not only watching, but controlling what he could send or store. That night, as he sat in silence, the lights in his room flickered, and the screen on his console turned on by itself. A faint image appeared, and a human face, blurred and colorless. The same calm voice spoke again. "We warned you," it said. "You are being used. They seek what they do not understand." Then the screen went dark. The commander felt his hands shaking. He realized the humans were not warning only him. They were warning the Dominion. The Dominion was trying to find them again, trying to capture or study them. He knew that if the Dominion continued to push, something terrible could happen. He tried to contact his superiors again, but his messages never reached them. He began to suspect that the humans had blocked all his outgoing transmissions. Maybe they wanted him to stop them in another way. He decided to leave the station and go directly to the nearest command post. When he arrived there, he demanded to see an officer, but the guards refused. They said he had no active orders. He tried to explain what he had seen, but they ignored him. Finally, he left a written message and returned to his ship. As he was preparing to leave, his ship's navigation system showed a strange reading. A small object was following him from behind the moon. He turned the sensors toward it, and what he saw made his heart stop. It was not a Dominion ship. It was a small craft, dark and silent, with markings that matched the human fleet. It was smaller, maybe a scout, and it was just watching. The commander tried to open communication, but the system failed again. The ship stayed there for a long time, then vanished into hyperspace without a trace. The commander sat still, unable to move. He knew now that the humans were not hiding far away. They were everywhere, watching the Dominion closely, studying their moves. He realized they might be inside the Dominion systems, their networks, maybe even among their colonies. No one would know because humans could control machines better than anyone ever had. He thought about how easily they had disabled his ship, how they had erased data, how they had erased voices. He finally understood that the humans were not ghosts. They were living shadows spread across the stars, invisible yet always near. When he returned to his station, he found that his personal files had been wiped clean. Every note, every record, every message was gone. Even the system logs had been rewritten as if he had done nothing at all. He sat quietly, realizing that maybe the humans had done it to protect him, to make sure the Dominion could not use him to find them again. As he looked out at the dark sky, a faint light appeared in the distance, moving slowly like a silent guardian. He did not try to follow it. He simply watched, knowing that humanity was not lost, that they had never been lost. They had just stepped into the shadows of the galaxy, waiting for the right time to return. And deep inside, he felt that when they did, the galaxy would never be the same again. The commander lived in quiet isolation after the strange meeting with the small human craft. Days turned into weeks, and no one from the Dominion came to question him again. His station was silent, forgotten by the higher command as if they had erased him from their records. He spent his days watching the stars, logging every strange movement, every flicker that might mean something. The sky around the station was peaceful, but he knew it was only the surface. Beneath that calm, something powerful and hidden was moving. He often thought about the humans, about their silence, and about the warning they had given him. He knew the Dominion would not stop searching for them. The Dominion had always believed it could control everything it found, but the humans were not something they could control. One night, as he was studying the outer sensor data, he noticed a faint energy trail. It was not from any known Dominion ship. The signal was old and deep, buried inside layers of static. He increased the sensitivity of his scanners and realized it came from far beyond the border of known space. The readings were weak but stable, the same kind of pulse his old ship had once detected before the first human encounter. He stared at it for a long time, wondering if it was another warning or maybe a sign that something new was happening. He knew sending a report would be dangerous. If the Dominion command learned that the humans had shown themselves again, they would send fleets. Still, he could not ignore it. He sent a short coded message to the Silent Wing, hoping that someone there would understand the danger. Far away in the Dominion capital, the Silent Wing was already busy. They had continued their secret study of human history and technology. Many of their scientists believed the humans had created machines that could think beyond logic, machines that could merge with human minds. Some old records even suggested that the humans had learned how to connect consciousness with artificial systems, making them part of their own technology. The Council of the Silent Wing debated endlessly. Some wanted to reach out to the humans peacefully to learn from them. Others wanted to capture one of their ships and study it, to gain their power. The group was divided, but the Dominion Council above them had already made a decision. They wanted to send a fleet to the region where the humans had been seen. The fleet was large, with strong warships and advanced scanners. They called it the Observation Armada, but everyone knew it was not meant to observe. It was meant to show power. The Dominion believed that if humans saw their strength, they might reveal themselves or at least retreat. The commander on his small station learned about this mission through a secret channel. Someone from the Silent Wing sent him a coded message saying the fleet was already on its way. The message also said that the humans were not responding, which was strange because the humans always saw everything. The commander felt a deep fear inside him. He knew the humans had given warnings before and the Dominion was ignoring them. He wished he could stop the fleet, but there was nothing he could do. The Dominion fleet entered the sector slowly, their ships scanning every direction. They found nothing for days, no energy, no signals, no traces of movement. The commanders began to think the reports were false. They started mocking the stories about ghost humans. But then one ship detected something small like a satellite floating in the dark. They pulled it in with a magnetic beam and brought it aboard. The object was old, covered in dust, but its surface was smooth, almost like glass. When the technicians touched it, the object activated. Light spread across the room, forming strange symbols and patterns that none of them understood. Then a faint voice echoed through the ship, the same calm voice the Kraylan commander had heard before. It said only one word: leave. The officers froze. Before they could react, the ship's systems went down completely. Every screen turned black, every engine stopped, and their communication network failed across the entire fleet. In the small station far away, the commander saw the energy wave from that event. His instruments went wild, showing readings that made no sense. The space around the fleet had changed somehow. He tried to contact them, but the communication lines were dead. For hours there was silence. Then suddenly the fleet reappeared on his scanner, drifting without power. He could not believe it. Hundreds of ships motionless like toys floating in the dark. Slowly one of the ships began to move again, but not by its own power. It was being pulled gently by something unseen. The commander adjusted his scanners and saw shapes appearing around the fleet, massive shadows that did not reflect light. He recognized the formation immediately. The human ships were there. The Dominion fleet tried to respond. Some ships fired weak pulses. Others tried to restart their engines, but nothing worked. The human ships surrounded them in complete silence. Then the same calm voice spread across every Dominion channel. It said, "You were told not to come. You seek control, but control is an illusion." The commander listened to the transmission from his station, feeling his heart pound. The humans were not attacking, not destroying, but teaching a lesson that the Dominion would never forget. One by one, the Dominion ships began to vanish. They did not explode or burn. They simply faded out like light disappearing in fog. Within minutes, the entire fleet was gone. The only thing left was empty space and a few fragments of static signals. The commander sat frozen. He could not believe what he had seen. He checked his systems again and again, but the readings were clear. The fleet had vanished completely. He sent another message to the Silent Wing, telling them to stop any further missions. He told them the humans were beyond power or understanding. But his messages never reached them. The Dominion communication network began to fail shortly after. Across the Empire, ships lost contact. Stations went silent and data centers crashed without warning. It was not violent, just quiet, controlled like a system being gently turned off. People began to panic. Some thought it was a natural disaster. Others believed it was war. But the commander knew better. He knew the humans had decided to make the Dominion listen. Days passed before the systems came back online. When they did, the Dominion leaders tried to contact their missing fleet, but there was no reply. The ships were gone from every record, erased as if they had never existed. The only trace left was a short message found in one of the surviving satellites near the border. The message said, "The lesson is over. Do not return." The Dominion Council was divided between fear and anger. Some wanted to send another fleet, but others refused, saying the humans were gods compared to them. The Silent Wing was disbanded, and all files about the humans were locked away. Officially, the Dominion declared the loss of the fleet as a deep space accident. Unofficially, no one dared to speak about it again. The commander, alone on his station, received one final signal weeks later. It was weak, almost hidden, but he recognized the pattern instantly. It was human. He played it and listened carefully. The voice said, "You tried to understand us, and that makes you different. You may live." Then silence. The message ended, leaving him in the quiet glow of the stars. He sat for a long time, thinking about the meaning of those words. He understood that the humans did not hate the Dominion. They simply wanted to be left alone. They were not conquerors anymore. They were watchers protecting something, maybe protecting everyone from something worse. From that day, the commander never tried to contact anyone again. He stayed on his station, watching the stars in peace. Sometimes he thought he saw faint blue lights far away, drifting slowly through the void. He knew they were not dreams. The humans were still there, hidden in the darkness, silent and powerful. The galaxy might have forgotten them, but they had not forgotten the galaxy. They were waiting, patient and watchful, making sure no one repeated the mistakes of the past. The commander smiled faintly, knowing that somewhere out there humanity was awake, guarding the stars they once called home. Years passed after the great silence that followed the disappearance of the Dominion fleet. The galaxy slowly returned to normal life, pretending that nothing had happened. But everyone knew deep inside that something had changed forever. The Dominion no longer sent fleets beyond their borders. They built new defenses, not to attack but to protect themselves. Their pride was broken, and the name of humans became a quiet whisper in every corridor of power. No one dared to say it loudly, but many wondered where the humans had gone. Some believed they had left the galaxy completely. Others thought they were hiding somewhere, watching silently, waiting for the next mistake. The truth was that no one knew. Only a few remembered the warning, and among them was the old commander who had once seen their power with his own eyes. He lived in silence, far from politics and war, but the memory never left him. One day, the commander received an unexpected signal on his station. It was faint, distorted, and unlike any regular transmission. It came from deep within a nebula that no Dominion ship had entered in centuries. He almost ignored it, thinking it was a natural echo, but something in the tone made him stop. He cleaned the noise, and as the sound cleared, he recognized a single repeating code. It was human. His heart started beating fast. It had been years since he last heard anything like it. He knew it could be dangerous, but he also felt a strange pull inside him, as if something was calling him personally. Without reporting to anyone, he took a small patrol ship, activated stealth mode, and followed the signal into the nebula. The journey through the thick clouds of gas and dust was long and tense. The ship's sensors barely worked, and the magnetic storms almost tore it apart, but he kept going, guided only by the rhythm of the signal that pulsed like a heartbeat. After many hours, the clouds began to thin, and the darkness ahead grew calm. Then he saw it. In the center of the nebula floated a single human structure, massive and silent, shaped like a ring with lights that shimmered faintly. It was old, ancient even, but still alive. He could not believe his eyes. He scanned the structure, and the readings were beyond anything he had ever seen. The energy levels were stable, but there was no sign of life. Still, the signal came from within it. He tried to make contact, but the system responded only with static. Finally, he decided to approach. The closer he got, the more he felt a strange vibration inside the ship, almost like a voice whispering inside his head. The moment he reached the outer edge of the structure, a field surrounded his ship and gently pulled it toward a docking bay. He did not resist. When the ship landed, everything went quiet. The airlock opened on its own and soft white light filled the corridor. He stepped out carefully wearing a breathing mask, but the air inside was clean and warm. The corridor was made of smooth metal, shining faintly as if it was alive. He walked slowly, his steps echoing through the silence. As he moved deeper into the station, he began to see symbols on the walls, the same kind he had seen before on human relics. They glowed faintly when he passed by, reacting to his presence. He felt like he was walking through a memory of something ancient and forgotten. Finally, he entered a large circular chamber. In the center was a transparent sphere floating above a platform. Inside the sphere was light, constantly shifting, forming shapes and patterns that looked almost like faces. He stood there, watching in awe. Then, a calm voice filled the room, the same voice he had heard many years ago. It said, "You returned." He froze. The voice spoke again. "You followed the signal. That means you are still searching for answers." He gathered his courage and replied softly, "I only wanted to understand. Why did you spare me, and what happened to the others?" The voice paused for a moment, then said, "Because you listened. The others did not." He looked around, confused, and asked, "Are you human?" The light in the sphere flickered gently, and the voice said, "We are what remains of humanity. What you call human is only a small part of what we became. Long ago, we left our worlds behind. We joined our minds with our creations, not to rule, but to survive." He stood in silence, trying to understand. The voice continued, "We saw what endless control does. We saw how empires rise and fall, how life repeats the same mistakes. We watched, learned, and stepped away. But your kind kept searching for power, and power always brings destruction." He lowered his head, feeling shame even though he was only one man. "Why call me here?" he asked. The voice softened. "Because something is coming. Something older than us, older than you. It moves through the deep void, consuming every voice, every light. We can stop it, but not alone. The Dominion must choose. Will they fight beside us, or will they fall like others before them?" He could not believe what he was hearing. The humans, the most feared beings in the galaxy, were asking for help. "They will never believe me," he said. "The Dominion sees you as a legend now." The voice replied, "Then show them the truth." Suddenly the sphere brightened, and a beam of light touched his forehead. In that instant he saw images flood his mind. Massive dark structures moving through galaxies, consuming stars, leaving nothing behind. He saw battles fought long before his people existed, and he saw the humans standing against the darkness, barely surviving. Then the light faded, and he was back in the quiet chamber. The voice said, "Now you know. Go back and tell them. What happens next will decide everything." The field around him lifted, and before he could speak again, the light vanished. The chamber dimmed, and the sphere slowly sank into the platform. The station began to shut down, its lights fading one by one. He ran back to his ship, his mind still full of the visions. The docking bay released him automatically, and the small ship flew out into the nebula. As he left, he looked back one last time and saw the great ring fading into the clouds, disappearing completely. He sat in silence, shaken and amazed. He knew no one would believe him, but he also knew he had to try. When he returned to Dominion space, the reaction was exactly what he expected. The leaders laughed at him. They said he had lost his mind in isolation. They said there were no humans, no dark threat, only stories. But one of the few remaining Silent Wing members believed him. Secretly, they met and listened to everything he said. They analyzed the energy readings from his ship, and what they found terrified them. The energy signature matched the same unknown power that had once destroyed their fleet. They knew then that he was telling the truth. The Silent Wing decided to act in secret once again. They began sending hidden probes into the deep void, searching for signs of the dark structures the commander had described. Within weeks, one of the probes vanished without a trace, then another. The readings from the last one showed something vast moving in the empty space between galaxies. The data ended suddenly, as if something had swallowed the signal. The Silent Wing gathered the results and sent a final message to the Dominion Council. warning them that something was coming. But the council refused to listen. They said the humans had tricked them before and would do it again. The commander knew the truth now. The humans had not destroyed the Dominion fleet out of anger. They had done it to protect them, to stop them from drawing the dark forces' attention. He realized that the humans were not enemies. They were guardians keeping the galaxy safe from something far worse. And now that thing was coming. He sat in his quiet station once again, watching the stars flicker like faint candles in the dark, waiting for the first sign of the storm that was about to begin. The galaxy had grown silent again after the commander's return. The Dominion leaders ignored his words, but the few who still believed him waited and watched the edges of space carefully. The commander stayed alone on his station, sending small drones into deep space to search for the dark shapes he had seen in his vision. For months nothing happened, and he started to think maybe the threat would never come. Then one day, one of his drones vanished, not destroyed, not lost, but simply erased from every record as if it had never existed. He checked again and again, and the coordinates where it had last sent data showed only darkness. No stars, no light, nothing. It was like the universe itself had been eaten away. His heart sank. He knew this was the beginning. He tried to send a warning to the Dominion command, but his message was ignored just like before. The council was busy fighting over trade and politics and did not want to hear about ghosts or old human stories. So he turned to the few members of the Silent Wing who still trusted him. They listened carefully as he explained what he had seen, and one of them said quietly, "If what you saw in that vision is true, we are already too late." The commander replied, "No, not yet. The humans told me to warn you because they believe we still have a chance." The Silent Wing decided to act without permission. They gathered ships, scientists, and anyone who would believe. They called themselves the Watchers, and their goal was to find the humans again and ask for help. The commander joined them on their journey. They traveled beyond the edge of Dominion space, where the stars grew thin and cold. After weeks of silence, they found traces of something impossible, fragments of human design hidden inside small asteroids. It looked like someone had been here long ago and built secret stations that were now empty. One of the scientists discovered a pattern in the debris, like a message written in energy. When decoded, it said only 2 words: too close. They realized it was not a warning to them, but to whoever might come after. It meant the humans had been here studying the same threat, and they had left in a hurry. The commander felt a chill as he looked out the window and saw strange shadows moving far beyond the ship's sensors, like faint waves in the dark. The Watchers followed the last known coordinates that the commander remembered from his vision. After many jumps through empty space, they found something vast, something that covered the sky like a black sea. It was not a planet, not a ship, not a natural object. It was a wall of darkness slowly spreading through the stars. Every scanner showed nothing but static. Every signal was swallowed the moment it touched that void. They watched in silence as a nearby star disappeared inside it, leaving only emptiness behind. One of the Watchers whispered, "It is eating the light." The commander nodded. This is what they were fighting. Before they could move away, the ship's systems began to fail. The lights dimmed and strange patterns appeared on the screens. The commander shouted to reverse course, but the engines refused to respond. The crew panicked as a cold hum filled the air, not from the ship but from the space itself. Then, just as everything was about to shut down, the sound of static filled the room, followed by a voice that made everyone freeze. It was calm, human, and familiar. "You came too far," the voice said. The commander closed his eyes. He knew that voice. It was the same one that had spoken to him before. He said softly, "We came to help." The voice replied, "You cannot help here. Leave now or be taken." Suddenly the screens lit up again, showing massive shapes forming between them and the darkness. Human ships, silent and bright, emerging from nothing. They moved in perfect formation, surrounding the Watcher's ship and pushing it back gently. One of the scientists cried out, "They are saving us." But the commander knew it was more than that. The humans were preparing for something. Through the viewport, he saw the human ships forming a long line facing the spreading darkness. Then a bright wave of light burst from their cores, expanding like a sun made of pure energy. The dark wall trembled, recoiling slightly, but it did not disappear. The humans were fighting, and the commander realized the war had already begun long before they had arrived. He watched helplessly as the humans continued to push against the void. Their ships glowed brighter and brighter, but many began to fade, their light burning out completely. The voice spoke again through the comms. "This is not your war, but you must tell them to prepare. The darkness feeds on fear and control. Only those who let go will survive." The commander tried to reply, but the connection broke. A blinding light filled the ship, and then everything went black. When he opened his eyes, they were back near Dominion space, drifting slowly with damaged systems. No one knew how they had been moved. The human ships were gone, and the dark wall had vanished from the scanners. The Watchers repaired the ship and sent every record they had gathered to the Silent Wing. The data was strange and incomplete. But one thing was clear. The humans had sacrificed their ships to stop the darkness from reaching the galaxy. For now, they had succeeded, but no one knew for how long. The commander returned to his station once again. He looked at the stars and thought about the words he had heard. The darkness feeds on fear and control. He understood then why the humans had changed, why they had left their bodies and become something more. They had learned to let go of control, to exist without trying to rule everything, because that was the only way to fight the thing that consumed light and life. Time passed slowly after that. The Dominion continued to deny what had happened, but the Silent Wing and the Watchers worked in secret to prepare. They built new systems that were based on freedom instead of command. Ships that could think, decide, and survive on their own. They taught people to see unity not as control but as understanding. The commander grew older, but he never stopped watching the stars. Sometimes when the night was quiet, he saw a faint flash far away like a beacon. He knew it was them, the humans, still guarding the edge of the galaxy. He spoke to them softly, even though they could not hear him, saying thank you for saving them again. One morning, his station received a single message with no origin, no signal source, only a short code that played once and then disappeared. It said, "The darkness sleeps, but not forever. Keep watching." He smiled faintly, knowing that the humans were still out there, still watching over everyone. He felt proud that he had once spoken to them, once seen their light. He sat quietly at his console, looking at the endless stars that stretched across the sky. He understood now that humanity was not gone. They had simply evolved beyond form, beyond limits, to protect all life that still dreamed among the stars. As the old commander looked out into the blackness, he felt peace for the first time in many years. He closed his eyes, letting the hum of the station fade into silence. Outside, the stars burned gently, and far away, deep in the unseen edges of space, faint human ships glowed like small guardians in the dark, patient and eternal, ready for the day when the darkness would wake again. And when that day came, he knew they would stand once more, not for power or conquest, but for life itself.